have to change the things you've always done in order to be something you've never been. So I really encourage you. You've just tuned into Rebel Wellness Podcast, your resource for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kaylee, also known as Coach Kales. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic beauty and body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopt a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. Hello, Rebel Soul. Welcome back to this next episode of Hot Take Summer. If you are new to the show, welcome to the show. So excited you are here. This is yet another conversation surrounding GLP-1 medications, aka Ozempic. Everybody knows Ozempic. But I am enjoying having these discussions because I really have spent a lot of time, especially because I've had several clients utilize these medications. I've wanted to be as educated as I could possibly be on these meds and the real life experiences people are having. There's a difference between what is in the research and what is in the field. And when we talk about the combination of the two, that's usually where we kind of come into like an evidence-based science approach, not necessarily an evidence-bound, meaning that there's a lot of people out there, especially when it comes to like science-based, study-based things, that they just stick to what happened in the study. But as many of you know, especially if you have any level of like scientific background, you had to read any of the literature regarding, research, that you would know that there is a lot of opportunity for what we call confounding variables, which means there's things that are not considered that can completely throw off the validity of entire research. So we want to make sure when we're talking about things like Ozempic, Wegovy, Ribellicis, whatever variation of a semaglutide, a GLP-1 medication, those are all the same thing. You may have heard semaglutide. That's just another term for GLP-1 medication. And all of those brand names are all the same thing. And when you have been hearing about that, it is really important that you take the time to educate yourself, especially if you're considering using it, if you are using it, or if you are planning to get off of it, which is hopefully why you clicked on today's episode, because I really wanted to discuss my hot take on everything I have gathered from, again, looking through the literature, seeing what other practitioners who work with a lot of people who want to wean off of GLP-1 medications, as well as my own clients, as we have tried to figure out the best exit path, you know what I mean? So it's really important for you to be well educated on it. So I took my time to kind of combine all of this conversation today on the very, very, very popular question that I'm giving you my hot take on is how do you successfully wean off of a GLP-1 medication and keep the weight off? Right? That's the biggest goal. We really want to be able to come off of these medications so that we can move forward with our life and hopefully maintain this healthier physique we have now created, but also not be married to or just have to live with a medication injection every week. It's not a sustainable cost for many of us. Even people whose insurance covers it for weight loss or whatnot, it is still roughly $300 minimum a month or so from the experience that I've seen with my clients out here, at least in California and Oregon and such. And so that's a lot, that's a lot of money that could be going into like a Roth IRA or something every month. I don't know. Whatever you could think of, that money could go somewhere else once you have achieved a healthier physique and body composition that you would like to maintain, and maybe you actually want to now carve it out. Maybe you want to put muscle on, help your loose skin, get more collagen back, and that comes from certain health habits. So today I'm going to talk to you about all of those top 6 professional tips backed by science and again by real life experience to help you achieve that. And if you are, again, not taking a GLP-1, but you have somebody who's taking it, or you just want to better understand it, this is a great conversation. So I really hope that you enjoy it and listen through to the whole thing so you can get a really well-rounded understanding of exactly how to achieve long-term success after a GLP-1. But I'm going to take a quick second to invite you to come join me on Instagram at Kaylee Loren or at Rebel Wellness Podcast. I have a really amazing wellness newsletter that comes out one time a month, and it's just jam-packed with health and wellness advice, products, everything that I love to use, what I'm doing right now, a lot of resources. And I just dropped a freebie that is pretty fun on my website and on my Stan store, stan.store/Kales. You can find the link in the show notes of my best items that I put in my gym bag as a fitness professional of 15 plus years. And it's all the best stuff that you probably didn't even think would make your gym experience better, but it will. And I've also included some extras. So it's a fun little downloadable PDF, free to download. And you just click on the images or whatever, and it'll take you right to Amazon where you can go check it out for yourself if you want it. I just created that for you guys for free, so I hope you take advantage of that. But I have a whole bunch of other freebies on there. And if you're listening to this far after this episode has been launched, there's probably more things available for you to go check out and learn from my resources. So come join coachkales.com for our newsletter, or come follow me on Instagram. We'd love to have you join our community. One thing I do want to also add is that this is not medical advice. This is a health discussion. So make sure that, again, if you are somebody who is using a GLP-1 or is considering it, make sure you discuss anything with your health with your medical professional. So again, this is just a discussion with my best tips, okay? So I have to give that disclaimer because it's important to know, especially when it's regarding anything medical based. So with that covered, let's jump into my hot take. Okay, so I think it's important to reiterate just basically what a GLP-1 is if you haven't learned that already, or if you have no idea exactly how it works. I get really in-depth on GLP-1 this time last year. It was one of the biggest, most popular Hot Take Summer episodes, episode 23. Check that one out. If you are looking to learn more in depth what exactly it does, I would highly recommend it, especially if you are somebody who is considering using it or is using it. It's really important you understand what the heck is going on in your body. But for a short little description, a semaglutide is a glucagon-like peptide receptor agonist. So basically, it is something, trying to put that into layman terms for you. Basically, it's a peptide that communicates in your body, and it mimics a receptor that helps mobilize fat, mute hunger, a lot of those things that are complicated for many people with metabolic dysfunction or diabetes, a variety of things. Sometimes it's one and the same. So depending on the brand, the FDA has approved a semaglutide for treating type 2 diabetes dominantly. That's how it got onto the scene. And then it also now has become approved for managing obesity and people who are in overweight categories where they want to prevent cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, etc. So as a GLP-1 receptor agonist, semaglutide balances your blood sugar, aka your glucose, and it suppresses your appetite, and it promotes that feeling of satiety, aka fullness, by allowing the emptying of your stomach contents to be slower. So essentially, it kind of slows down your digestion and it helps suppress your appetite. So the hunger hormone called ghrelin is not as aggressive as it normally would be for an average body that is not using a GLP-1. And it also helps balance your blood sugar levels, which is why it became initially a diabetic medication. And then they've now seen its positive effects for all those other categories that I just discussed, and in the previous episode 74, actually, I was discussing how it has been helping a lot of females who are in the overweight or obese category, body fat percentage wise, who are struggling with PCOS, which is insulin resistance of the ovaries, they call it. And so this can be a very multifaceted medication. That's why it's very powerful. Throughout my research and experience with this medication, I have molded my opinion differently for different categories of metabolic dysfunction. So for me, as a nutritionist and a wellness coach and everything, I've actually been able to see how it can really benefit various groups of people. So when people kind of have this one lane mentality of, oh, that's just for diabetics, you're really taking it away from diabetics. Yes and no. I actually discussed that in an episode. I believe it's episode 66 or 63. It's one of those. And I have a little bit different perspective because as a nutritionist who has actually single-handedly helped people with type 2 diabetes reverse their type 2 diabetes or manage it through nutrition and lifestyle, I do know that these medications are not limited to just diabetics. They should not be the primary thing that diabetics use for managing their blood sugar. It's absolutely their responsibility to manage their blood sugar through their nutrition first, because dominantly that is where we get our glucose, okay? Glucose doesn't just come out of our body without us doing anything. It's typically lifestyle habits where they are eating far too much glucose for their energy output and a variety of other things that puts them at higher risk. So saying that these medications are only reserved for diabetics is not my favorite phrase to hear anymore, because it removes the responsibility over a person for taking care of themselves. However, obesity and fat loss, this is a little bit, they go hand in hand. However, one is a lot more complicated than the other. So you can immediately adjust your nutritional glucose intake through what you put in your mouth. However, what your body does with your body fat, how much it deposits, how much it utilizes, has a lot of different things in play that influence it. So it's not quite as simple as just immediately eat better, move more. A lot of people say that. However, we have a ton of research now over the last several decades where we are seeing that the metabolic landscape in, let's say, a morbidly obese body, now it is different. It is operating in a way that is not the standard equation of calories in, calories out. That's just the facts. If you don't understand that and you think it's all hogwash, I very, very much encourage you to start to look into some of the research recently on obesity, morbid obesity specifically, because it's very unique. Our bodies have never existed the way we exist now. High stress, extremely high body fat percentage, and a large amount of environmental toxins. So of course, we're going to have a really unique metabolic landscape that is coming around that a lot of times doesn't work the way we thought it would work. It doesn't fit the normal energy equation, for example. So that's really fascinating. And I find that to be really cool. If I were to go back and get my doctorate, I would love to explore that more, just because it's fascinating and it's new, especially for females, because the female body landscape ecosystem in general is very different and operates extremely unusually to the males, which is why we have hardly any research behind the female body, for example. It's a very complicated body and it can do so many amazing things, but that also means that it's adapting to this situation, especially the last several decades, differently than ever before. So that's a concept that I really like to kind of drive home in this modern discussion about GLP-1s, because I hear a lot of different things and I see it in the comment section on social media posts about people using GLP-1s or whatever. And I think that that's important for you to understand, and from more of an open mind, because especially from the background of people who are professionals with how nutrition is medicine, how nutrition is therapeutic, how lifestyle is therapeutic, just understanding the body from a deeper sense. It's really important to know that there is more to your situation with diabetes, especially type 2, because it is lifestyle related, that you can absolutely do more without just the medication. So I want to make sure that that's well understood, especially when it comes to this discussion, because today most of the conversation is surrounding people who are utilizing GLP-1s for weight loss. And maybe it goes hand in hand. There's a lot of people who need to lose a significant amount of body fat, especially excess body fat, in order to have a healthier longevity. So that's a discussion that I've even had with a lot of close friends and family and clients in general, is that sometimes the trade-off of the risks of using a GLP-1 is not any different or is not as intense as staying the same weight in excess body fat percentage, as long as you already probably will be if you didn't use a medication. So kind of let me rephrase that. So if you are thinking, okay, well, I'm scared of the risks of using a GLP-1 versus I'm not making any progress and able to actually keep weight off with natural methods, then you are most likely still going to have a large amount of health issues because of being at an excess body fat percentage. Because unfortunately, that's just the circumstance of being at excess body fat, because it's going to mess with your internal environment massively by default. So if you have the opportunity to potentially use a GLP-1 for a year or two, move a significant amount of weight, get confident again, get into habits that you actually feel good in your body in, such as getting into workout classes or hiring a personal trainer, or maybe cooking for yourself and feeling just better about taking better care of yourself, that is great. That could kickstart you into those habits and you will have long-term success. So with that said, all of those things said, let's jump into the top 6 things that you have to do to have long-term success. This is a have to do. None of these are optional, okay? Anybody who thinks any of these are optional most likely will gain the weight back on over time or immediately. So I really want to make sure that you understand that these are really not optional things if you want to get off this medication and have long-term success maintaining the body weight that you achieved. Okay, so the first thing that you're really going to need to do is make sure that you gradually transition off the medication. So you should make sure to work with your healthcare provider to taper off of the med gradually in efforts to reduce the risk of weight regain immediately, because there is not a lot of long-term studies on just taking it, going up to a 1.5 or so dosage and then completely dropping off. There's a lot to be said about the people who have done that just because they're like, oh, I was too nauseous, or, this or that. I just didn't like it. I didn't feel good. And then they just stop and then they immediately gain all that weight back. And then they go online and social media and saying like, oh, that stuff doesn't really work. I gained the weight right back, or I gained more weight back. There's a lot of little things that go into why that happens, but one of the big ones can be that you didn't taper off the medication, and the medication works through communication of peptide receptors, and it's communicating differently in your body than just putting in like a fake hormone like birth control. You're actually trying to encourage a change of how your brain and body and your stomach is communicating for your hunger, how the speed at which you are digesting. There's a lot of things that are going on. And if you immediately remove that artificial communication, things are going to most likely go awry immediately, versus there's a lot of evidence and experience where people have slowly gone down back from, let's say they go all the way up to 1.5, they go to 1.25, they go to 1. A few weeks later, they go to 0.75 or 0.5, and then they stay there for maybe a month or two, and then they go down to 0.25 again. That's a proper way to therapeutically reduce that medication in your system and have a smoother transition with your lifestyle changes. Okay. We're going to talk about those lifestyle changes in a moment, but that is really important for you to do, especially with the guidance of your practitioner, because a lot of people don't do that when they just decide to get off of it on their own. And then there's a lot of repercussions for that. So I put that as number one on my tips because it is very, very, very important that you take that component seriously when you are trying to have long-term success phasing off of a GLP-1. Okay, so I kind of have these listed in order of importance. So number one, the transitioning off seems to be the most important thing, specifically when utilizing these GLP-1s. So that's why it is the first thing I talked about. The second thing is that you definitely need to prioritize adopting healthy habits. So this should be done while you are taking the GLP-1. This shouldn't be something that's backseated or you wait until you're ready to phase off of it. You're going to have much faster and higher quality results using a GLP-1 if you adopt healthy habits while you're on it, because then while you're transitioning out of it and slowly lessening the GLP-1 therapy, you're going to want to have these in place. You need to have your nutrition locked down as close as possible to ideal as you can, and you need to have exercise into your routine weekly, if not daily, because your body is at a completely different mass size, and that's very jarring for your metabolism. And as you get off of something that's artificially adjusting your metabolism, and AKA it's actually making it really slow, you're going to have a hard time transitioning back into, eating regularly and such if you are not already eating healthy, nourishing foods that wouldn't be putting on excess fat in the first place. So, eating your vegetables, the best things that they say that you need to do, number one is high protein diet. Across the board, all the doctors who advise people phasing off of GLP-1s and having success, high protein diet. So whatever that looks like for you, it could be high plant-based protein. It could be ideally high animal-based protein because there's a lot more nourishment in there. And it's bioavailable to the body, meaning that your body is going to be able to utilize almost all of those nutrients much better than a plant-based protein. That's just physiologically how it works. But depending on your goals, it's fine if you want to prioritize plant-based protein, but you just need to eat a high protein diet. So that means 30 to 40% of your daily macronutrients you eat, daily calories you eat, are coming from protein sources. Okay. So that's important because protein doesn't become fat. It doesn't get stored as energy as easily. And it also comes with a huge bang of nutrients. And satiety comes with high protein because of the way that the structure is very metabolically expensive, meaning that your body has to work harder to break it down, which means you're going to stay fuller faster and longer. So high protein diet is always a proponent to a lean body across the board, a healthy lean body. So you really want to prioritize protein first. Then you're going to be looking into good amounts of fiber from your veggies and fruits. You can utilize whole grains or whole food sources such as potatoes, and anything that involves a lot more fiber-rich components to it. I actually have a really easy, useful downloadable. That's my macronutrient grocery list on my website, coachkels.com, or on my Stan store. And it has a huge list where I break down different macronutrient categories, so proteins, carbs, fats. And I actually break down the carbs into starchy carbs and non-starchy carbs to help you better understand which ones you should be picking from. And usually when you're coming off of GLP-1, you want to stick to more of like the water-soluble and insoluble fiber coming from veggies and fruits, and certain starchy foods are not as ideal. So that list is actually a really easy hack for you for better understanding what your body should be eating when you're coming off of this, because understanding the sources of the food that you eat helps you make those long-term better choices for good. And you definitely need to understand the food you eat, because a lot of people have no idea what makes up what they're eating, and they'll think they're eating just like a carb and protein. And in reality, there's like a lot of fat in there, like yogurt, for example. A lot of people misunderstand their yogurts. So being able to understand your nutrition labels as well as, the macronutrients that make up what you eat is like the key to having healthier habits. So that is really important. I'd like to input that in there because it is really key as far as what all the doctors have said who deal with people coming off of GLP-1s all the time, as well as just research in general. Because if you don't eat well, odds are pretty strong that you were not eating very intentionally prior to taking a GLP-1. Therefore, you gained all the weight that made you probably want to use a GLP-1 to get the weight off. So therefore, it's important to understand you have to rework how you understand the foods you eat, why you eat them, and how it makes you feel so that you can maintain that long term. So the other component to it is going to be prioritizing your exercise weekly, specifically strength training. Okay, specifically resistance training. So you will always see across the literature, even people who get liposuction, the groups that were studied that did strength training 2 to 3 times a week minimum always maintained the results after. So lean muscle mass is extremely powerful. The most metabolically active part in your body, meaning that it's going to utilize a lot more energy just for existing. It takes up less space than body fat, and it's going to keep you way more energetic, way more functional in life, give your body shape, and have just, it's just going to look sexier than people who don't have muscle. So prioritizing muscle is very key, especially when you're coming off a GLP-1, especially for those who maybe get the quote unquote Ozempic butt, or whatever happens when you basically lose so much fat so fast that you don't have any shape underneath because you didn't really have muscle before, perhaps. So that's something that's really interesting to understand, is that you do need to put in some resistance training into your weeks every week as much as possible. Well, not as much as possible. I would recommend probably anywhere from 2 to 4 resistance training sessions a week, around 45 minutes to an hour. And that's going to be your best bet for maintaining your weight loss and keeping it off and having a better, healthier physique in general. And that is the biggest component to keeping your body in the right body composition long term. So those two things, adopting those two healthy habits, approaching your nutrition better, and really nailing it down, as well as your exercise, are going to be the best things that you can do, scientifically backed, to keep your GLP-1 weight loss off. Okay. So that's super, super, super key. So I would say number 3 kind of goes alongside, like hand in hand with number 2. And that's you're focusing on your behavioral changes. So it's super, like I was saying in the last tip, people underestimate how much their behaviors influence the way they become. And, with saying it out loud, it almost sounds like, duh, you know what I mean? However, it is really easy to kind of mindlessly exist in life and not realize what behaviors you're doing and how they're stacking up to become where you were before you started the GLP-1, right? I see this all the time, especially with clients who have utilized GLP-1s. It's usually excessive drinking, mindless eating, too much stress, not taking time for themselves, not prioritizing movement. Those are the biggest behaviors that I always see that lead to where people end up in the position where their body fat is now very stubborn. It is very excessive. There's a lot of it. And it's always in that like midsection or the booty and the thighs, all these areas that most of us just really don't want excess body fat. And because of not only just physically how it looks, but also because of the health risks that come with having a lot more trunk body fat. So body fat around your vital organs, that's a huge risk factor, right? So when you think about taking GLP-1 or you're on GLP-1, what behaviors were part of your day-to-day that were influencing you overeating or constantly yo-yo dieting, like undereating then overeating? Maybe you weren't sleeping enough because you're on your phone too much. Maybe you weren't managing your stress well. And so throughout your week, you would just kind of rush through the work week, and then you get home and you just drink and you lay around, because you're burned out. What behaviors are influencing that body fat gain and the stubborn body fat? Why is it staying there? You know what I mean? So focusing on those behaviors that were prior or maybe current, even when you're using the GLP-1, and really identify them, like write them down and try to work backwards on how can you change them? Like, what is the change you want to see? What is going to be supportive of better longevity and vitality when you stop doing those things? You know what I mean? So an easy one is like, okay, I was hardly moving that much because I have a desk job or whatever. Then schedule in and become habitual with walking. So maybe after every dinner at night, you go on a 30 or 45-minute walk with your partner or your pet or yourself, with some podcast headphones, listening to a book on tape, whatever it is. Make a new habit that you enjoy that gets you moving more so that you increase those steps every day. And it's not just about the steps, it's the fact that you're moving. Walking is extremely therapeutic for the body. It's essential. Our bodies as humans have always walked daily, and nowadays we hardly walk. I'd say several of my clients that struggle the most with movement in their day sometimes only clock in 2,000 to 3,000 steps in a day. And that's hardly anything, guys. That's hardly anything. On average, we should be moving 6 to 12,000 steps a day. So you really want to find where you can get those in. And, a lot of my clients will find that just walking for about 2 to 3 miles is 10 to 12,000 steps a day. And that's pretty easy to do when you're just mindlessly wandering around your neighborhood or something like that. Walking in nature is so good for your body and stress management. And it just takes 30 to 45 minutes out of your day. And it's very important. And it's probably better for you to do that right after dinner, not only because it also helps balance your blood sugar when you're digesting, but it's better than you just eating a big meal and then plopping onto the couch and watching Netflix. Eat your big meal, go on your walk, then plop onto your couch, Little tiny behavioral changes like that. Big life changes. They're going to be big lifestyle changes for you. And they're essential for you keeping a positive relationship with food and fitness and how your body is maintaining the results from your GLP-1 therapy. Okay. So you need to eat mindfully. You need to manage your portions. You need to handle your stress better. Whatever behaviors, again, that you identified were not so great that you had before, try to find positive solutions for now. And you have to continue those changes. A lot of people gain back all the weight mainly because they never address the behavioral problem. I see it all the time. I have clients and friends that still struggle with that because they refuse to identify and change the patterns that they're so used to. It's comforting, and food actually does have a dopamine reaction in our brain. So we want to make sure that we understand our downfalls that got us to where we are so that we can be differently long term. So that's so key. Very key. Number 2 and number 3, big moods. They go hand in hand. So I would highly recommend you either work on that if you can identify it on your own. And if you can't, hire a coach or a therapist, perhaps if you are somebody who struggles with eating disorders or anything like that, to help you work through all of that stuff actively, because it's going to be a huge waste of your time and your effort taking GLP-1s if you don't work on any of those behavior changes and adopt healthy habits, because then you are just going to gain it all back and it'll be such a waste of time. Okay, so number 4 is that you should be monitoring your progress. So it's really important for you to be regularly tracking your weight and other health indicators so that you can detect early signs of weight regain. Not in a way where I want you to become addicted to weighing yourself every morning on the scale. I usually recommend my clients, when they're working on a healthy relationship to the scale, to weigh themselves like every Sunday or every Monday morning, something that's just once a week. And especially for my naturally cycling female clients, you do have to understand that your weight should be changing every single week by a couple of pounds, because we fluctuate with water weight all the time. But you should, on average, take all 4 of those weights from that month, divide them by 4. Is the average about the same over the next couple months? If it starts to creep up, that's a sign that you are gaining excess weight for whatever reason. Then you look at your lifestyle and you observe, okay, am I not moving enough? Be realistic with yourself. Be mindful. So mindful is observing things without judgment, right? So observe your behaviors and just what has not been ideal for maintaining that body weight. Maybe you've started to sneak in little sweets here again, or maybe you've just been too stressed and you don't even remember some of the last couple of weeks. Those things are going to help you become more proactive on your weight and understand, are you gaining weight back? Is it something you can have more control over? And yada, yada. So monitoring your progress is going to be the only way that you're really going to be able to know, aside from, clothes fitting differently. But you'll want to monitor it. And I do recommend things like the scale or other, if you have a gym that has like an in-body scanner that can monitor your body fat percentage, those are really good resources for you to utilize once a month or once a quarter to kind of keep an eye on, am I maintaining that body fat percentage and weight that I got down to that I feel happy about? Or, am I actually just going back up and I need to change some things? It's also really important to consider utilizing professional help, like a fitness professional, a personal trainer, or like a health coach, or somebody who is certified nutritionist, dietitian, somebody who can help you monitor your progress if you're not doing so good at it or you don't really understand it. And you can do that for a couple of months or so, or maybe a year, learn things from them hands-on, and then move forward on your own as well. That would be another professional tip that I would have for you if you're somebody who is not very good at understanding your monitoring, like the different health indicators and such, because they're just going to be, it's their job. It's going to be a lot better for them to help you better understand those things. Okay. So that would be tip number 4, is make sure you are monitoring your progress so that you can catch any moment where you're regressing. And if it's significant, then you definitely want to hire some help. I wouldn't rush back on to the GLP-1. I would just make sure that you have professional healthcare that is not your practitioner, healthcare that is going to be, again, a nutritionist, dietitian, health coach, fitness professional, people that do help with those lifestyle changes that can help you manage. You know what I mean? Because their whole point is you're trying to get off of the GLP-1. So don't rush back onto the GLP-1 the moment you gain like 5 pounds. There's going to be better ways around that. Okay. And again, I think that's actually a really important point for me to bring up, is that you may experience some levels of weight regain by default of you might be holding on water naturally again, because a lot of people who take GLP-1s drop a lot of water weight and they keep a lot of water off because they're kind of chronically dehydrated, unfortunately. So it is really important that you take a lot of electrolytes consistently and a lot of hydration consistently while you're on GLP-1. But a lot of people don't realize that they've been, at a very dehydrated state most of the time when they're on the GLP-1. So when they come off of it and their kidneys are rebalancing their water, they might put on water weight again, which can be anywhere from literally 1 pound all the way up to 12 pounds of water. Like, I have seen it. I have observed it. We have tracked it. I know how much water people fluctuate. And on average, females fluctuate 3 to 6 pounds of water weight, especially during their cycle. So it's really important to understand that all weight gain is not the same. A lot of it is just water, especially when you've had maybe an unusual meal, or as your metabolism is getting used to eating more food again. It doesn't mean that you're immediately putting on fat. Okay. So it is important to better understand as well what your health indicators, including your weight, can mean. And that's why taking consistent weigh-ins and then doing an average is a way better way to understand what your body's doing. We do this all the time with my clients who do tracked macro cuts, aka caloric deficits, and I have them weigh 4 times throughout the week, and then we take the average of that week, and then you continue down, and then that's how we can see their actual long-term progress with where their weight is going. Because especially female bodies, we fluctuate like crazy. So it's important to understand that. Okay, so the last 2. Number 5 is build a strong support network. So it's super key. I guess that's kind of similar to the monitoring your progress comment that I was making about having somebody that helps you stay accountable in the form of either a professional or family. Highly encourage you to surround yourself as much as possible with the supportive friends and family. Because if you don't have, your circle isn't encouraging you and motivating you or just supporting you in general, that's not good. That may actually be why, or a lot to why, you ended up in the position you were in before utilizing a GLP-1 for weight loss. You know what I mean? So be very conscientious of who you surround yourself with. And it might be time to cut out some toxic relationships or dose those people, or actually just confront them, maybe tell them like, hey, it really disappoints me because I love you and, this or that. You've been in my life this whole time, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I really don't feel like from the comments you make or the actions you do or the way that you always want to give me more food or things like that, it's not very supportive of my health goal of maintaining this body fat percentage, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And just be real with them and be like, I'm not trying to be mean and call you out. I just don't feel supported by you and I want to keep you in my life. However you want to come about it, it's really important to have those conversations if you find that person to be worth trying with, and having be part of your supportive circle. And if they aren't supportive, that's a really big sign for you that, okay, you need to move on from them, and it's really uncomfortable. But at the same time, a lot of what you had before in your life may not have always been supportive of where you are now and where you want to go and where you want to be and who you want to be. So sometimes you have to snip, snip. And so that's really important to think about when you are coming off of a GLP-1 even, because it could influence you in a negative way to regress and go back to where you were before. And that's something I actually discussed in, I think it was episode 66, where it's like kind of an alternative conversation about whether or not you should go on a GLP-1. A lot of times we have people who are kind of subconsciously jealous or insecure or feel shame, and then they put that on us and they encourage us to not utilize something that could potentially put you in a healthy body and you on track for success and whatever. And unfortunately, a lot of humans do that to each other. And so if you have people in your life that are sabotaging you in a way, you really should consider cutting them out or dosing them, or aka seeing them less often, and just take care of yourself, because that's really important in this time when you're phasing off of a GLP-1 and trying to maintain a healthier body and healthier mind, because a healthy body comes from a healthy mind. And another thing that you could do is consider joining a support group, especially if you're looking for like additional accountability or inspiration, because humans are massively community based. And if you have somebody you can look up to or aspire to be or do it with, like having friends that you can go to the gym with, your gym buddy, you're going to have a lot more long-term success having a community. So finding your community when it comes to that is going to be really, really, really key for long-term success. Big time. If you don't have anybody that is going to be supportive of you and it's just all on you, there's a really high chance that things can fail, because, you're not always going to be able to motivate yourself and keep yourself on track all the time. So have people that you can fall back on. That is extremely important. All right, guys, let's get into tip number 6, the final tip. And that is just a really basic, easy one. Stay informed and inspired. So similar to what I was saying about building a strong support network in tip number 5, you want to stay inspired to take care of yourself. So continuously educating yourself around nutrition, exercise, healthy living, finding high quality, qualified people on social media to follow that help inspire you. I'm not talking about the toxic, really skinny chicks that live in Bora Bora all the time somehow that are super tan and whatever. Don't follow those people. Those people are just going to make you like subconsciously hate yourself. They're not the people to follow. I know everybody else and their mom is following them, but I would say focus on people that have similar body types to you, or they are well qualified in whatever eating style you've been finding that you really enjoy and that keeps you healthy, any of those things where you just find like really authentically health promotive, that they don't seem like they're just trying to push some fake facade or some crazy polarized diet and eating style. Try to find something that's well-rounded and supports and aligns with you. Okay. So you need to follow those people that align with you in a positive way. So, or the ways that you want to be, but again, observe whether or not certain things that you see from them makes you feel icky or not. And that's going to help you understand, like, is this actually inspiring, or is this actually just shaming me in a weird way and making me feel like, oh, I need to be that way, when in reality, you could never look that way. They're like 6 feet tall and like 15% body fat and you're like 5'1" and you're in a healthy 30% body fat. You know what I mean? Like don't try to push yourself by following social media people that just don't align with you in many different ways. But also staying informed is really important during all of your journey, because better educating yourself like you are doing right now by listening to this podcast and reading books or articles or going to workshops, staying motivated and informed on your healthier lifestyle is going to be extremely key for sticking to it. Okay. So all of these things are components to what they usually would put in one of those TV shows where they try to help people lose a ton of weight and stay on track. They always need a support network. They always have to become better educated and take better care of themselves. They always have to stay inspired to keep their health on track. And they're always changing their behaviors. Okay. Because you have to change the things you've always done in order to be something you've never been. Right? We all know that phrase. If you don't, you know it now. You have to change the things you've always done in order to be something you've never been. So I really encourage you to take these all very seriously. If you are somebody who is on a GLP-1 or is coming off of a GLP-1 or knows somebody who is, share this episode with them if that's the case. But that's it for today's episode. I hope that it was helpful for you, and this can be applied to even any type of weight loss. Even if you weren't taking a GLP-1, these would all be extremely important things for you to consider implementing if you're somebody who is in the process of losing extreme amounts of weight or is going to be losing an extreme amount of weight. Definitely take these to heart. And as always, celebrate your strength and nourishment, walk with confidence, and I'll catch you next week on another Hot Takes Summer episode of Rebel Wellness. Hey Rebel, I just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in and sharing this space with us. Before we sign off, I've got some exciting ways for you to stay connected and to take your wellness journey even further with me. First up, if you haven't already, make sure to swing by CoachKales.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's your go-to source for the latest episodes, exclusive content, and a whole lot more wellness goodness delivered straight to your inbox. Check out the show notes for those high-quality tips on nutrition, fitness, and just overall well-being. Follow us on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast and my flagship page at Kaylee Loren. We're all about building a community where we can share, inspire, and grow together. So I would love to see you there. Now, if you're looking to reset and realign after a vacation, a hectic work season, or just because you feel like it's time for a healthful cleanse, I've got something super special for you, and it's 100% free. Head over to stan.store/Kales and download my free realignment detox guide. You can also find it at CoachKale.com in the freebies section. I'm sharing my unique holistic approach to help you cut back inflammation, improve your skin, and even shed some excess weight with this guide. So trust me, you're going to love it. Go download it for free now. But last but not certainly least, if you've got a burning health question you'd like answered on the show, or if you're curious about my one-on-one remote coaching or group courses, don't hesitate to visit my website and reach out to me there, or hello@KayleeLoren.com is my best email for contacting me. I am here to support you on your journey to wellness, so do not feel afraid to reach out. All right, Rebel, catch you on the next episode.